Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is our presentation, How to Nonprofit Your Social Media. We are Voto Latino, and just a couple of information that we're going to give to you. First off, let me just say thank you for attending this. Thank you for attending our presentation. Really appreciate it. I know it's a hectic time right now with the election coming up on November 3rd. Be sure to register to vote. Be sure to vote early. Be sure to vote by mail if you can. So we are Voto Latino. My name is Norberto Briceño. I am the Director of Social Media for Voto Latino. Before this, I was actually working at BuzzFeed for 5 years. I am the co-founder of Pero Like, which is their Latinx content channel on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all social media platforms. I have been with Voto for a year and a half trying to implement a social media strategy that can get our message across, not just to get people registered to vote, but also to make sure that we have informed Latino voters, making sure that our community knows what's going on in the world of politics, in the world of our culture, in the world of our community, and making sure that they are able to have all of the tools, all of the information ready to go when they need to go out to the polls or when they need to vote beforehand. So I'm excited to be part of Voto. I'm excited to be part of this voter registration journey that we're all going through. And that's it for me. Mariah.
Hey, I'm Mariah Castañeda. I'm the social media manager. So I am the voice behind all of our social media channels. I'm also the SAS. I started my social media journey 5 years ago when I was an intern at a small nonprofit political news org. So yeah, I covered politics there. It was a lot of fun. I did their social media stuff. I was not great at it back then, but I never left social media and I never left news. I actually still moonlight as a journalist. So you can see my work at Fusion, Splinter, The Root, California Health Report, Voice of OC. My work has also been featured in the New York Times a couple times. And right now, on the side, I do work for LA Taco, so I'm a reporter there too. It's a small little news outlet in Los Angeles, where I'm from. And so with all that being said, I'm really passionate about news. I'm really passionate about information. I'm really passionate about creating content that, informs people and makes them do something, right? So that's kind of what I do at Voto Latino. I help inform, educate, and empower our community. And for us, empowering is really harnessing and unleashing the power of the Latino vote. And so I use all that to help us register people and get them engaged with their politicians.
Yeah, and in other words, we're just passionate about our people. We want our people to succeed. We want our people to, we want to amplify the power of the Latino community first and foremost. We're beautiful, we're diverse, we come from different walks of life, and it's time that we get represented culturally, politically, and in this country. All right, so just a little bit about Voto, who we are. We are a grassroots political organization, and what we do is essentially, like we said, we empower, we educate, we engage a new generation of Latinx voters. We've been doing this for 15 years. So we've been cultivating ways that our community can, be represented, making sure that they go out and vote. It's such a simple concept, but it's also one that takes a lot of time. It takes a whole community to make sure that our people are engaged as well as they should be. And so Voto Latino has lots of programs outside of the digital spectrum, but we are a digital first organization. We do lots of ads, we do social media, we do digital content, we partner with tons of organizations, and we make sure that, again, we're all in this together. So we all try and work hard. We work together to make sure that people are, that our people are, part of this system, part of this democracy. So Voto Latino on social. What does our social media look like? We focus on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. At the moment, we have nearly 260,000 likes on Facebook, over 105K followers on Twitter, and over 85K followers on Instagram. It's one of those things where we try and really hone in on where we do the most good. We try and make sure that these are the 3 platforms where our audience is consistently engaged. They are consistently paying attention to what we post. So for that reason, these are the 3 we have decided to really put all our eggs in. And so far, it's been a pretty crazy, wild ride. Our main jobs at Voto are to inform, engage, educate, and celebrate. So what does that mean? Oh wait, actually, before I get to that, we do all of this in an effort to make sure that our people are registered to vote. That's our bread and butter. It all comes back to this. Everything that we do, every piece of information that we put out, every engagement, every celebration that we do for our community, we try and hone it in so that at the end of the day, when we try and cultivate an audience that will be ready to register to vote when the time comes. So what does this mean? Inform. We literally plug into the news every single day. We find news stories that affects our community. We find news stories that are happening in the political world, that are happening on a cultural level, on a local and national level, and we curate. We curate news stories that our community might be interested in. We curate stories that our community needs to know. One of the things that I think is imperative is that we try and let our people know, oftentimes, the information that's out there. There's so much information that our community needs to process. And so what we like to do is we try and sift through the news and give it to them, right? So when Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris as his VP pick, our people need to know that. Also, what happened with Vanessa Guillen, the tragedy out at Fort Hood, that was a story that affected our community on a very deep level. But not a lot of mainstream media was covering it. So what we did was we amplified it. We amplified the news that our community needs to know. And we do it with a certain style. We don't just inform our people. We like to give our 2 cents about how we personally feel about these news stories. We're not CNN. We are Latinos who care about our community, and we abide by our Latino community first and foremost. We are not for Democrats. We are not for Republicans. We are for the Latino community. And so every time we inform our audience, we make sure that that's exactly the angle that we're coming in from. We also like to educate. There's so many complex issues. And I know that sometimes in this nonprofit world, in this political world, a lot of things seem very obvious. It seems obvious to scholars, to people who, to politicos, to people who spend all their time on Twitter just looking through politics, sifting through political trends. But there's a lot out there that our community doesn't know about. If my cousin doesn't understand something, it's imperative for us to create content that will be able to explain it to them. In this instance, everybody is talking about the caucus, right? Very early on during the primaries, the caucus is this, the caucus is that, the importance of the caucus happening. There was so much happening about the caucus, but nobody was actually there to really explain what the hell the caucus is. So that's what we did. We took the idea of the caucus, we broke it down, and we used tacos to illustrate what the caucus is. And it's one of these, and we like to take very complex political issues and break it down for our people. Vote by mail, same thing. What are the myths? How do we dispel the disinformation? We got to make it so that it's succinct and easily digestible for our audience. When all the impeachment proceedings were happening, we saw a lot of misinformation, a lot of misinformed people being like, impeachment equals kicking the president out of office. Well, no, there's a process. Impeachment is an entire process. How do we explain this? We do this with videos. We do this with graphics and illustrations. It's a way to make sure that our audience, the Latino community, knows what is happening. So far, I want to say that it's been very interesting for us to take this information and make it into bite-sized pieces of information that our audience can easily digest. Mariah, no, wait, not yet. And then finally, we engage. We like to make sure that our audience is informed, our audience is educated, but at the same time, they need the tools to be able to do something out in the world. When it comes to saving the post office, when it comes to, demanding voter protections and funding for fair elections, when it comes to our leaders in Congress doing something for Vanessa Guillen, where do they start? They want to do something. Our audience wants to take action. So what we have to do is provide them with the tools. When it came to save the post office, these are the people that you got to email. We streamline that connection for you. You got to email, you got to call your members of Congress. When it comes to emailing your senators for voter protections and fair funding, these are the people that you have to hit up. But we make it easy for the viewer. We make it easy for them to use this tool, to just be able to click the link in our bio, to click the links and make sure that they are able to use these tools to take action. And then finally, with the Vanessa Guillen one, there was a pent-up rage. You could feel it, you can read about it, but people didn't really know what to do. There were a lot of CTAs all over the internet. So what we did is that we took them all and put them all in one place. How to email, how to call, how to donate, and making sure, and we gave them a script to make sure that they were actually talking to their representatives, and we told them exactly what to tell their representatives. We give them the tools, and we make it so that it's easy for my little cousin to be able to take some action. All right.
Yeah, so the other thing we want to do is celebrate our community. We're always doing all this fighting. We're always doing all this, advocacy and, telling our people what's happening. And sometimes that can get really overwhelming. But we also want to celebrate our culture and show people what we're fighting for. So here we want to do things that celebrate our culture, our community, our food, the people doing amazing things in our community. So here we have this beautiful picture of a woman that's celebrating Honduras and at a DC festival, and it's beautiful. She's wearing a traditional dress, and it makes me really happy. Here in the middle, my friend Luis, he has a torta truck, and he makes tortas, and it's great. But there, he actually gets his community in South Central to to fill out the census. And he's really passionate about it. His family has had that truck there for like 25 years, longer than he's been alive. And he uses it as an opportunity to get money into his community. But he's not alone in all this. Where there's other food vendors. There's my friend Rudy, that he's a taquero, and he likes to register people to vote at his truck. There's another person at Triple Threat, which is a Puerto Rican food truck, that registers people to vote. So we highlight these people because these are people that are in our communities that see us every single day, right? I know some of these food vendors have had the same, customers for years. So they're a part of our community. They're doing the great work. And I want to highlight that because that's us. And I want to highlight the people doing good work in our communities outside of the nonprofit world. So here we also want to celebrate our wins and getting awards. So here we have Jarrell Jerome becoming the first Afro-Latino to win an acting award at the Emmys. Super exciting. It was a moment of pride for all of us. So when I do this, I really go back to thinking about my own family. So I remember at the beginning of the Trump administration, I remember, one of the first travel bans. I remember an Ecuadorian lawyer actually sued the president and helped sue the president for that. And I remember I sent a Remesco article to my mom, talking about it. And I thought it was just gonna be a conversation between me and my mom. But then suddenly I was put into this big old group chat with my grandma, my aunts, my cousins. And everybody's just talking about this Ecuadorian lawyer and how he's going up against the president and how proud everybody is. So, and it made them really happy and excited. So when we celebrate ourselves, I think it gives us a moment to feel pride, to feel, happy about our community doing something. Because so much in the media we're depicted as being victims and being, hurt by this administration and other things in politics. So I just want to remind, I think me and Norberto really just want to remind people how great our community really is and how special we all are. So yeah.
And everybody, just real quick, if you have any questions, anything, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. And we'll definitely have some time at the end to make sure to answer some of these questions. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. And then of course our bread and butter is registering people to vote. So everything else we just discussed gets people to register to vote. We also do these things where we have these beautiful graphics that our graphic designer Alex makes. So in this instance, there's a balotero. It's cool. Like, this looks like the guy that strolls across the street from me. It's relatable. The balotero is a huge part of our community. Living with my grandpa in Adelanto, I remember the balotero has a really, important job in the desert cities especially, but really anywhere in any community. So we like to highlight those folks that, are there in our communities and really serving our communities and are part of our communities. So here you have this really cool CTA, register to vote. It's clear, it's concise, and it's beautiful. And in this middle, it's just like a simple tweet that says protest and vote, because we know that our work doesn't end once we vote. We have to continue to pressure our politicians to do the right things. And this last graphic is really pretty and it's beautiful. It's a woman that says voter on it. So we really use different means of showing our community in all its beauty, getting our people excited about our community, and telling them what's up to get them to register to vote. So really quick, in the last year and a half, we've increased our total organic impressions across all of our channels by 115%. Our engagements grew by 51%, and we've increased our follower growth by 65% compared to the 2 years before we implemented our social media strategy.
All right, y'all. So what are we doing here, right? I think it's safe to say that this is one of the things that we consistently run into. I think the idea of doing social media for nonprofits tends to be very, sometimes it can be stifling. We fall into this trap, right? Where we treat our social media channels as, as a PR firm, right? We want to put out press releases, tons of information, lots of beautiful graphics. And oftentimes there's something missing. There is something consistently missing with a lot of our, social media. Voto Latino, I know we had an issue with it. A lot of other nonprofits had an issue with it, where we were just trying to inform people about what's going on, but there is a big element missing, right? Oftentimes it's very boring. Not a lot of people share it. Not a lot of people are engaging with the content as much as we would like to. And part of that is because we tend to play it safe. A lot of nonprofits always play it safe because we don't like offending anybody. We want to make sure that we inform our people, and that's pretty much about it. And oftentimes what happens with that is that we're not as real as we want to be. We're not as engaged as we want to be. So part of it means we got to stop playing it safe. Social media is a wonderful tool, but it's a mixture of art, creativity, emotion. It's all of these things bottled up, and whoever's running your social media accounts, you got to make sure that they are bringing something to the table. So today, what we're going to be talking about is our strategy. And again, this is going to include some ups, some downs. It's going to be a little bit of what we have learned. There is not one singular formula to how to make great social media content. Every organization is different. Also, it's a lot of experimentation. It's a laboratory. And it's one of those things where it's not a fine line. This is not math. This is art. This is cooking. You're trying to, work some stuff out. You're trying to make some posts that touch on different things. And how do you cultivate an audience by doing that? It's a lot of work and also taking a lot of risks. And again, we say this because this is how we do it, but just because this is how it's worked for us, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody. we want to say that this is just one of many different methods of being able to make great social media content. So just keep that in mind.
So the first thing is that you want to use your authentic voice. So what does that even mean? Emotion is key. You want to sound like a human being and not a PR firm. So for example, if we're going to share a news story affecting our community, we have to inform our audience, but we also have to tell them how we feel. Because social media is all about emotions, right? Even when you're being informational, you need to add emotional context. In order to do that, you have to figure out your voice. So when I'm trying to tap into this, you know, I have my background as a reporter, and I know there's always that part of me that's like, oh, be unbiased, which is, you know, not really real. So I always think about, how would I tell my friends about this? I've always been that one friend that my friends would go to and ask me, hey, Mariah, what does this mean? What does this whole policy mean? What's happening in this news story? Break it down for me. I just need the, you know, the bare bones version of it. Yeah, people would ask me, want to be hanging out with them at a bar, wherever. So I bring that kind of energy to the social channel. So you need to figure out, like, what do you stand for? What does your organization believe in? It doesn't matter if you're a C3 or C4 organization, you have to stand for something. So for us, we stand for progressive values that amplify a Latinx community that embraces its diversity, intersectionality, and power as the second largest voting bloc in the country. So what I try to think about is, if your organization was a person, what would they look like? What do they sound like? Who are they, and where are they from? So for us, Voto Latino is a well-informed, well-versed homegirl who can speak Spanish, English, and Spanglish. She's a homegirl who's not afraid to take off her golden hoops and throw down to protect her people. She's a college graduate who can recite the Constitution of the United States and will still cuss you out in all 3 languages. Voto Latino is the homegirl who's fierce, funny, smart, chingona, but above all, always there by your side. So for me, I think always being there by your side is really guiding our audience and our community through a lot of these difficult political processes. And some of these, you know, I didn't know when I was in college how to get involved. I didn't know how to pressure our senators. I didn't know how to pressure Congress people. That didn't come until I started, you know, getting into reporting, getting into community organizing myself, that I learned how to actually do some of these things. So for me, helping my community in this way is empowering our political voice, our political power at the polls, but also telling people how to, you know, put pressure on the representatives. So finding your voice requires creativity from those managing the page. So what that looks like is me, Norberto, and our graphic designer, like, you know, collaborating, thinking about, okay, what resonates with me? What resonates with you? How is our community gonna take this? Because, you know, we're not a monolithic group, but we do wanna know, like, okay, what's gonna resonate with people? What are people gonna respond to? Because like what Norberto said, it's all about, you know, cooking up something new and constantly evolving and creating something new. So don't be afraid of trying something new. It also requires internal conversations with your organization. So that means talking to the higher ups, figuring out what's the furthest you can go without getting into trouble or too much trouble. And yeah, making sure those boundaries are really clear cut so you can, you know, like what's your range. It requires a lot of risks and experimentation. Sometimes you're gonna spend so much time, all this emotional energy creating what you think is the perfect piece of content, and then it's gonna flop, and that's fine. You just try something new again. It's totally cool. You also want to be consistent. So what I mean by that is you need to have a consistent voice so your audience knows what they're getting from you. Your audience is like, okay, this page is about like Latinidad, politics, culture, and how to amplify my voice. Cool. And as long as people have that consistent voice of what this person sounds like, it's easier for them to tag their friends. It's easier for them to tell their friends about you because they trust that you're going to be the same page, have the same voice, etc.
So yeah, so now that we've talked about your voice, we got to talk about your audience. So, specifically, who is your audience? Who are you talking to? Where do they live? Where do they come from? When posting, you got to always think about who is this for? We oftentimes tend to think, well, it's for everybody, for people who are interested in what we do. But that's not good enough. You got to really pinpoint to say who is going to share this content. For us, when, we're called Voto Latino, we do Latino things. We post about Latino, Latino celebrations and tools and all this stuff. But it's not enough to just say that we're talking to all Latinos, because again, that's too broad. You got to know your audience. We are not one monolithic group. So who exactly are you talking about? Are you talking about Chicanos in East LA? Are you talking about Caribbeans out in New York? Are you talking about Tejanos out in Texas? Are you talking about Cubans out in Miami? Who are you talking to? And you got to really be able to be specific to say, these are the people who follow me. You got to be able to say that who in your audience knows about you. What's their gender? Where are they from? How old are they? These are things that you gotta take stock of and make sure that you're able to really deliver your messages to your audience. You gotta know who your allies are, and yes, you gotta know who are you willing to piss off. Let's just be real, right? If you want to please everybody, that ain't gonna work. You gotta get over that, because it's one of those things where you gotta learn that if you want followers, you want to cultivate an audience, but you also want a quality audience. Who is it that you want following you? So for us, let's just be real. We're not for all Latinos. We're specifically for anti-racist Latinos who want to participate in civic engagement and want to amplify the power of Latinx voters. We are not an organization for Latino Trump supporters, and guess what? That is okay. They attack us, and that's fine. They have every right to. But at the end of the day, we're focused on growing and fostering a positive, progressive Latinx audience. That's the people that we want following us. And we're gonna work hard to continue cultivating that and keep empowering them. And again, if you try and please everybody, you're playing it safe. Can't say that enough. You gotta be able to you gotta be aware of how you look to people who don't like you, and then brush that off. And this is the question that this works for nonprofits, this works for media, for any social channel. What's the emotion that you want your audience to feel when they read one of your posts? When they see a graphic, when they see a video, what's the emotion? There has to be a big emotion attached to your content. You want to make them laugh. You want to make them cry. You want to make them so angry that they want to take action. Figure out what that emotion is. And it's not just about showing trauma porn over and over again. That doesn't work. What you got to do, it's a combination of emotion, information, and engagement, and being able to create content that provides everything. It lets people know what's going on in the world, how it makes them feel, and what they can do about it. So those are things that definitely create the perfect storm for content. It makes for more shareable content. It makes for more viral content. And stay away from being nice. Nice is cool. And, you know how your grandma makes like a sweater and gives it to you, and you're like, oh, pues, abuelita, no, pues this is so nice. Yes, it's nice, but it's boring. You gotta be able to find an emotion. Yo, this is fucking badass. I love this. This is amazing. Yo, you gotta be able to elicit an emotion from your audience, because that's ultimately how you make it more shareable and therefore more viral.
Yeah. So next up is content. So what works on Twitter? So you want to respond to the news. Keep it timely. There's always a conversation to plug yourself into. So the trending tabs is your best friend. I'm constantly checking it and seeing if there's something that we can respond to. And if you tap into those conversations quick enough, it helps boost your engagements. So our audience is mostly political reporters, activists, people who are in the know and want to get involved. Be real, be yourself, and be a little sassy. Like, I have my own personal Twitter, and I try to have as much fun on that, when I can. And I try to practice on that, so that way when I'm trying to be sassy on Voto Latino, it's not a huge shock for me, and I've already had tons of practice doing it on my own personal Twitter. So for example, there's the Goya post. It's a really informational post plugged into a timely conversation. It expresses the feeling of being backstabbed by a prominent Latino icon. And it's a feeling that was shared by many in our community. I don't know about you, but a lot of us have, cans of Goya beans or sazon in our pantries. So for this guy to make millions off of our community, to build all his wealth off of our community, and then say that Donald Trump, that we were blessed to have him as a leader, like, no way. I was so mad. And I'm sure everyone else is mad too. And that's why it did so well, because we tapped into that anger. We tapped into that outrage. Like, I don't know, I still feel kind of sick every time I'm like shopping and trying to get, some canned goods and I see the Goya section. Like, it hurts. So this was a perfect trifecta of something that was informational, timely, and emotional. And it did so well because that emotion resonated with so many people.
For Facebook, let's just be real, Facebook is older. Our audience is older. There are a lot of the old school Latinos. They're your tios, tias, your grandparents sometimes. Just an older demographic, and it's also millennials who are, on their way to becoming old, like myself. And so one of the things that we got to understand is that because of this, Facebook tends to skew more toward negative emotion, anger, sadness, fear. And for this reason, this is something that we have to be able to understand and also create content around. In this instance, there was the death of, Mejor Morta, who died at Fort Hood. And as we know, what happened at Fort Hood, it's not something that's widely publicized, but we had the death of Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales also there. And this had been the third person of color who had died at Fort Hood. Something wrong was happening and nobody was talking about it. And part of it is that we needed to be able to have a conversation. There is something seriously wrong happening at Fort Hood. We don't know, but we need our leaders to be able to do something about it. And so why did this do well? This is a relatively good post. It's a news story that really hits people on a deep level, but it not only informs people about what's going on, the death of Mejor Morta. There's the deaths of Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales. So it lets people know what's happening. And it makes them feel a certain way. It makes them feel angry. It makes them feel sad. And, they see their kids and they see their nieces and nephews portrayed in these photos. And suddenly they're stuck with this emotion and they need to do something about it. They want to be so angry that they want to, get Congress to do something. And so the reason why they're sharing this post is because they want to express how angry they feel, but they also want all of their followers, all of their friends, all their family members to be just as angry as they are. And so it's one of those things where they want, again, the emotion is what triggers people to share things. It makes people want to share this news story, amplify this news story, and let people know that something needs to be done. It's one of those things where it takes a while for you to see that there's a pattern when it comes to information, emotion, and action. And this is in Facebook, we see this consistently. It's usually these terrible news stories that do best. Now, this doesn't mean that it's always negative. We talk about experimentation and taking risks. Our audience, yes, they might be older, but they like nostalgic content. They like reminiscing about the simpler times. And in this instance, we took a risk. How do we make voter registration content that can go viral, that can be engaging? And so we made a playlist, a rancheras playlist, 15-second clips of all of your favorite rancheras. And people really, really really responded to this because nostalgia does well on Facebook. It taps, our audience knew these songs, but they hadn't heard them in a long time. It's in the back of their brains. So when you put this video out, it brings it to the forefront. And suddenly they're like, yo, I haven't heard that song in a long ass time. And they start tagging their sisters, they start tagging their parents, they start tagging their tias, their tios, they start tagging everybody because they want to share, yo, remember these songs? And it's a moment of joy. They are happy and they want to share this joy with everybody else. And that's why, again, this is one of those things where not only did we do something that shared very well, but we're also whipping in the message, yo, by the way, register to vote. And it's one of those things that, again, these are fun to make, and we didn't know if this was going to work on a voter registration platform. But you take the risk, you experiment, and this is something that we saw had a great results. We also, we didn't have it on here, but we had a salsa playlist that, got over 30,000 shares, and it was insane. Like, it's huge numbers. So we were very happy to see this, and we got great engagement, and more importantly, new eyeballs. So that was something that really helped us out.
So what works on Instagram? The cool thing about Instagram is that sometimes you just don't need a graphic as long as your text is front and center. So for example, there is this example of AOC responding to that sexist tirade that Rep. Yoho subjected her to. In this case, a simple screenshot suffice. Don't be afraid to plug in the conversations that you had on Twitter onto Instagram. The cool thing about this is that there are way more users on Instagram than there are on Twitter, which means that chances are your audience didn't see your cool tweet on Twitter, on Instagram yet. So it doesn't always have to be your organization's tweet though. So this was really cool. I mean, the whole situation wasn't, but her response was really inspirational. A lot of people were outraged, but a lot of our followers are really inspired. It was really relatable to a lot of women that have experienced this kind of thing at work. I'm sure a lot of women, maybe women here, have experienced something similar to what AOC experienced. So to see her just speak out nationally and speak out for herself and stand up for herself really resonated with our audience. So on Instagram, our audience heavily veers female. So we have like 70% of our audience is woman or identifies as woman. And you can kind of see based on the comments, if you actually see the comments, it was mostly all women being really excited. They were talking about how she was inspirational. They were talking about how she's setting the tone, how she's setting a good example. And the next slide, in this post, I also used a video, and like the next slide. So you actually had a video of AOC, her whole speech. And the cool thing is that in the comments, people were listening to the speech and people were pulling out their favorite quotes too. So it was just a really, really fun kind of moment for me too as a social media manager, even engaging with all these comments. And we're gonna go back to engaging with comments later and why that's so important. So the other thing that works on Instagram is these beautiful images. So on Instagram, people love beautiful images. Instagram itself is artsy, idealistic, hopeful, but it's also a place where you can really have a good discussion and CTAs. It's not like Twitter where like everything you say is just broadcasted everywhere. It's a place where you can have these conversations in like a single comment section or like in someone's story or something. So it's a little bit more private and it allows an entire community to be together and talk about things amongst themselves. So in this example, for the Vanessa Guillen post, these graphics are useful, they're beautiful, and like what Norberto said earlier is that our audience, really wants to know what they could do to help. There was all this information everywhere and we just kind of consolidated it. So we started with this very beautiful front picture of Vanessa Guillen, and it said like, here's what you can do for Vanessa Guillen. So it's good in that you look at it, it grabs your attention immediately, it's visually pleasing, and you immediately want to share it, right? So it helps you stop scrolling, and it's shareable, so you can put it on your Instagram story, or you can send it to your friends, or you can tag your friends, because when you see that lead image, you know exactly what you're gonna get. And so in the next slide, we pointed people to the representatives, told them how to talk to the representatives, told them how to call them, how to email them. We even gave them a script in case people were confused on what to say. And we also directed people to her GoFundMe link. So in this case, it's like really helpful. What we could have done, we could have actually put all of this information all on one graphic, but that would be too small to look at. It would be hard to share, and it's better if you just do it this way.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think there's something to be said about like, like when people put press releases, like the text needs to be instantaneous. It needs to grab your attention from the get-go. And here, I think this is a great example of that, that it's just there in the forefront, and you grab your audience's attention within the first second. When it's super tiny and small, it tends to kind of, get lost with all the other swiping that's happening on your phone.
Yeah. So this example actually broke my heart. So what doesn't work is that if there's not a certain emotion attached to your point, you end up with something like this. So this is a Father's Day post. It was kind of what I was talking about earlier, when you can invest a lot of energy into something, be really excited for something, and then it just doesn't do very well. So in this case, there is great art, but it doesn't say anything. This would work as a beautiful poster. I would get this as a poster, but on social, it just is kind of flat. There's no specific call to action, there's no timely news story, and no specific emotion that we're drawing into, or we're drawing from the audience. Ultimately, it's just a nice post, and what we talked about earlier is that nice doesn't usually do well. I mean, it's great, it's beautiful, but maybe if we had a better CTA, like maybe, I don't know, something like register your father to vote or something, it might have done better.
Yeah, and also don't be afraid to share fun stuff. Social media is supposed to be fun. It's why people use it in the first place. You ever notice how many of your cousins share memes on that stuff? Yo, it's because it's supposed to be fun. That's exactly what it is. So you don't have to always be so monotonous. You don't always have to take yourself too seriously. Share fun stuff. Share stuff that makes you happy. Share stuff that makes your audience happy. It doesn't always have to be in the scope of your work. Make sure that if you consistently just tell people to take action and take a look at this terrible news story, and you're just beating them over the head with it over and over again, you disengage your audience. And it's one of the issues that we had early on, that sometimes we just didn't know how to have fun. And so this is one of those things, right? Whether you're celebrating pupusas, whether you're showing a video of two dudes dancing la chona, whether you're showing a video of an Ecuadorian kid putting a mask on his dog, it brings people happiness. It makes people want to share it with people, with their friends, with their families. And it's one of these things where by doing these types of posts, of fun posts, you get people to share it with people who are maybe not so much involved in voter registration, but they loved the joyful videos that you do post. They love the video of the kid putting the mask on his dog. You get new followers, you get new engagement, you start tapping into other communities, that you're reaching out to other communities. And so this is imperative. And also, again, we have to reiterate, do not regurgitate trauma porn. I know it's sometimes easier to put black and white photos of kids being, sad, and it's always terrible, but we have to find a way to be able to do it without inflicting this mental health damage on our audience. We got to be able to find different ways, different angles to talk about the seriousness of a lot of the tragedies that are happening right now across the country. We try to be empowering and inspirational rather than just sulking in the negativity of it all.
Yeah, and that being said, as social media managers, you have to keep tabs on your mental health. Try to take breaks when you can. Social media can get really overwhelming with all those negative messages. So just try to take a break. I try to share some memes that I think are fun on our channels. And yeah, if you don't take breaks, you're not going to be fresh. You're not going to be able to put out that great content. So just try to avoid burnout if you can. Oh, and my favorite part is read the comments. Please read the comments. I cannot overemphasize this. I know everyone says, don't read the comments, it's not good. No, read the comments. Don't be afraid of your audience. Like and reply to your audience. Reward them for participating. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. To go onto someone else's page and put yourself out there, say what you want to say. It takes a lot of energy. I don't like to comment on other people's things unless I know them really well. So the fact that your audience trusts you and the space that you created enough to actually say what they want to say, reward them for that. Sometimes I just have fun in the comments. Like there was one case, I did like a post about schools reopening without any PPE, without any safety measures for their, for students. And like there was high schoolers in the comments section that they were tagging their school districts and they were saying stuff like, yo, my school district did this. Wow. So I'd comment like, wow, that sucks. But also it's really funny that they're all tagging, their school districts. I'd say, oh my God, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Dang, what is your school district doing? But it's fun and it rewards them for participating. And ultimately, I want to hang on to those young high school followers because I need them to register to vote and I need them to tag all their friends and I need them to feel seen. Yeah, wait, go back, sorry. One sec, sorry. I would also encourage you all to engage with negative comments. I mean, unless they're just straight up trolls that are like, MAGA trolls. But for other people, it's okay to engage. I get a lot of comments that say stuff like, I'm never gonna vote for Biden, So I'm like, oh, okay. I would really like your help in getting Trump out of office, but if you can't do that, are you gonna vote locally? And they always say yes. So then once I say yes, I redirect them to a voter registration link because ultimately my job is to register as many Latinos as possible. And, who knows, maybe they will vote for Biden once they're in the actual voting booth. I don't know. But I do know that it's my job to get them in the voting booth. It's my job to get them to register to vote. And ultimately, I want them to vote in those super progressive candidates that they're going to vote for. And in this case, oh, never mind.
Real quick, yeah, because we're almost running out of time, yo. But I think ultimately, again, don't be afraid to experiment. This kind of keeps hitting the same point over and over again. Don't be afraid to try things out. Don't be afraid to engage with different things. Like Mariah said, please comment. Please be able to comment and foster a community in your comment section. And also make sure, restrict people. Think of it as a window. If somebody keeps shouting through this window, it's okay to put down the blinds. It's fine. You figure out what kind of audience you want. Go after that audience. And again, experiment. It's essential to do that. And it's one of those things that it makes you human. It makes you come across as a human being first and foremost. You're not just an organization. You're not a PR firm. You are a human being. So with that said, do we have time for questions, homie? What's going on there? We'll take a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, you have like 9 minutes left.
Oh, even better. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at some of these questions. Oh my God, this is embarrassing.
Any graphic design advice for people getting engaged who may not know about your specific issues? Yeah, I think as long as you can make the text, front and center, as long as you can make it really good, modern, engaging text. So what's really cool right now is that, nice loopy 70s text. Also making it something that can draw your audience in, using punchier colors. Do you want to add something to that, Norberto?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta try out different things. You're not gonna be able to get it the first time around, or maybe you are, but it's one of those things where you need to be able to try different things, try different color schemes, try different types of fonts. It's very hard to really pinpoint a specific way to go about it, because again, our strategy has been the experimentation, making sure that you experiment, but also figuring look at your analytics. What are people responding to? What are they resonating to? And it's one of those things where you got to be able to, yes, experiment, but also look back on your data, because that relying on the data is essential in teaching you how to proceed going forward.
Yeah, I would also add, think about what grabs your attention on social. Think about what kind of posts grab your attention, informative posts grab your attention, and maybe go from there. Okay, labor unions. This one's really interesting. I think as far as labor unions go, during bargaining, there's a lot of content, but between campaigns, many unions I work with struggle to come up with compelling content. Yeah, I can definitely see why that would be a struggle. I would think, at least from, my perspective, I think, okay, I think thinking about what's happening in really easy layman's terms, like if you were to go out with your friends and your friends were like, hey, what's happening during this bargaining thing? How would you explain it to your friend, not a coworker, a friend that you're just hanging out with, socializing with, whatever? And think about how you're going to talk about it that way. Also thinking about it from like a more humanizing perspective. So like, what is the plight of your labor union? What are they going through? But explaining that in a way that's like, how do you say, more casual. And
Yeah,
also,
like how would you literally get your 10, if you have a 10-year-old cousin or something, explain it to them. And if they are able to understand the concept of what you're talking about, that's usually a good indicator that this is something worth actually pursuing. Oftentimes with a lot of what's happening, we're stuck in the world that we are fighting in. And the problem with that tends to be that we are so entrenched in all the logistics of what we're trying to do that we forget to take a step back and be able to see the wider picture. And in this instance, right, with a lot of what's happening, with what's going on in the world that you're fighting in, we need to be able to better inform people who are not part of that world. And hence, like for us, whenever we do explainers, it makes it so that people are actually, like we're explaining to them things that are may seem obvious to us, but not obvious to a lot of people. So it's one of those things that I think it's imperative.
yeah, I think I also just want to add, I think, wait, hold up, I just lost it. Oh yeah, I think I try to look at other accounts that I really look up to. So I look at the New Jersey account, the New Jersey government account. I also like the Southern Democrats account. So these accounts really unapologetically own who they are. So think about who are your members, who are you, and just try to unapologetically own that. So when I see the Southern Democrats posting, I think that's what their account is, posting, the way that they talk in the South, I think that's really cool and fun. And so yeah, just unapologetically own who you are, own what your labor union stands for. I don't know exactly what labor union you are, but if it's like a specific kind of industry, own it and add it and kind of really lean into it.
Do you use Spanish language plugins on your website or other social media? So the way we see it is because we are, for younger Latinos, we are starting actually to really make content with more Spanish language, but we are English first, because the hope is that people take the content, right, and then they can go ahead and explain it to their elders, explain it to their tias, their tios, their parents. It's very useful. Oftentimes when it comes to Spanish language content, it doesn't actually perform well on our socials. It gets very little engagement. Having said that, this is one of those instances where the metrics really shouldn't matter. It's there for people to be informed and engaged. But again, our process through it is we discovered that really what's happening is English-speaking, younger generations are taking the content and then explaining it to their elders who are Spanish-speaking first. And so that's what we've seen. But going into this election season, coming in through November 3rd, we are amplifying more English. We are amplifying both English and Spanish content.
Yeah.
What is the difference between informing and educating? Yes, the difference is informing is letting people know what's going on, what's happening in the hood, what's happening in your community. There is so much news that people need to be aware of. There are so many deadlines for, voter registration. There's so many voter registration deadlines, mail-in ballot deadline, a lot of information that the community needs to know. Informing them is literally going out and letting people know what's up. Educating for us is breaking things down, explaining to them in detail what certain things are. So when we're talking about the census, when we're talking about caucuses, when we're talking about impeachment, when we're talking about these very politically, these complex political issues, and we break it down for the audience into digestible information, that's usually what we refer to when we say educating. Oftentimes again, we need our community to be not only informed, but well-educated on a lot of these issues. Oftentimes we're seeing that not a lot of people are, again, we saw it with the impeachment proceedings. A lot of people thought that, well, Trump is getting fired. And the reality is that it's not. There's a process. So us educated people means explaining every step of the impeachment process and making sure that they knew that this is something that they need to be aware of. So when the news talks about it, or when they see it out on social media, it's important for them. They already know what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to blow through this one really quickly. How important of a role will hustle play in getting out the Latinx vote? So yeah, our campaigns team does that a lot. I think right now when we're in a pandemic, it's going to be extremely important to find ways to get into people's homes safely, and that's through hustle. So I think it's really important. If you have the ability to use it, use it. Okay, our social accounts are pretty dry and informational driven. How do we transition to this engaging, exciting new voice while maintaining the consistency you mentioned and not shocking your audience? Well, you're going to shock your audience, and it's fine. It's okay. You can even try something new. Just be like, hey, that's it. And just have your fun content, just do it. And if you lose some followers, that's fine. We had a massive following of all the moderate and Republican followers that we had. And you know what? Bye. I don't want them. I want better followers.
Also, keep in mind, you gotta look, it's real talk. You gotta talk to your organization about what you're gonna do. I think we've gotten in trouble a couple of times because we put something out there that, you know what, this is too extreme. And we're just like, all right, fine, whatever, we'll take it down. I don't care. But the thing is, you gotta, again, you're speaking for your organization. So it's imperative for you to check what are the guidelines. Like, let the organization build the sandbox and you go in there and play in the sandbox. And then every once in a while, you keep moving the sandbox a little wider and it's a lot more fun that way. But again, a lot of this means, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of posting something and then you look at the tweet and you're like, no one's gonna like this. No, never mind. Try not to do that too much. Go with your gut instinct and post. Make sure that it's something that if you're passionate about, listen to your instinct. A lot of the presidential debates were gut tweets, literally from the gut, tweeting from the hip, because that's ultimately what did well. If we're trying to inform our audience during a presidential debate, you're doing something wrong. It's all about emotion.